Shalom, everyone. Welcome. We're in session 5 of Hope. Today, we're going to meet some Hope heroes, including Maoz Inon and Yael Noy, who are with us, but also people from your past. And my goal today is to introduce each and every one of us to yourself as a Hope hero, because we can all exemplify hope for other people and for ourselves. Some new guests are joining us today. And I'm just going to catch you up, and it will be a bit of a review for people who have been studying hope together. In the world of positive psychology, hope begins with negativity and uncertainty. Now, I think that there are times when we can gain hope from something inspirational, from something beautiful, from something good or even heroic. But most often, when we call on hope, it's because something is negative or uncertain. If everything were perfect, we wouldn't need any hope. And once we realize that we're in a negative or uncertain situation, we marshal our own inner resources. What do I have at my disposal within me and within my immediate reach that I can use to address this negative or uncertain circumstance? And of course, we also reach out for support. Then we gain perspective. You can gain perspective by having new partners when you reach out for support. You can gain new perspective by projecting yourself into the future or into the past and looking on the current situation from the wisdom that comes from either of those perspectives. You can read widely, talk widely, think of differences and possibilities, and just not be stuck in one approach. And when you have different perspectives, that enables you to recalibrate as things change and to minimize the risk so that you can take the next best step that feels safe to you. And all of this is about agency. That's what's in the big letters here on your screen. Exercising our agency, having goals and multiple pathways to get to those goals so that we are agile and recalibrating and continually exercising our free will. And if you do all these things, you'll get to the pinnacle of hope. You'll get to high hope. Now, for those who listen to Maoz's TED Talk, you'll recognize that he talks a lot about agency in slightly different words. He talks about creating a detailed roadmap. Those could be called pathways, and about execution, which is another way of exercising your agency. As a rabbi, I meet people who have done all they know how to do and somehow come to a brick wall. They don't have the ability, at least not right in the moment, to climb any higher on the pyramid of hope. So maybe you feel disabled or depleted, or you've come to the end of your agency. That is not a hopeless situation, because I believe everyone still has the hope of acceptance. Hope of acceptance accepts, first of all, its own limits. If we didn't know that our agency had limits before the pandemic, we certainly know it now. If we didn't know that our agency had limits before October 7th, we certainly know it now. So hope of acceptance accepts the limits to agency, and it also accepts help and reliance, not just on other people or other stakeholders or other organizations, but on transcendent forces. Hope of acceptance invests in a power greater than oneself. That power could be God or nature or love or peoplehood or democracy or our shared humanity. You might have several different sources for the hope of acceptance. And I picture the night sky here on the screen because looking up is a common human way to gain perspective and to plug into a power that's greater than ourselves. Famously, God took Abraham outside, vayotze oto hachutza, and said to Abraham, habet na hashamayma usfor hakochavim im tuchal lisporotam. Look up at the heavens and count the stars if you can count them. God was encouraging Abraham to rely on God for hope. Because in the natural world at that moment, Abraham didn't see a hope for future progeny, and yet the hope was given to him that they would be as many as the stars in the sky, if you can count them. So, what we're really saying is that sometimes we have the power within ourselves or within our social circle to change things. And then we need to act on that power. And sometimes we don't have the power, but there is a power greater than I and we that we can rest in and call upon. The hope of agency works toward particular goals, while the hope of acceptance works toward trusting that a good future can and will unfold. And that's important if we're going to keep up our actions and our agency. Now, one thing that's really telling is that the bottom of the pyramid, uncertainty, and the top of the pyramid, high hope, have in common the idea of possibility. At the very bottom, you don't know what's possible. You're perhaps agonizing about what's possible, worrying about what's possible, catastrophizing even about what's possible. At the top, you don't know what's possible because you've come to this new peak and you say, what could possibly be next? What's my next challenge? What's my next opportunity? And so possibility builds on possibility. Pyramids build on each other, and you can climb all the way to the top and then ask, what else, what more is possible? Now, I have a quote here from the book of Lamentations, Eicha. Jeremiah says, at the end of a horrible chapter describing degradation and destruction, Ulai yesh tikva, maybe there is hope. And I think Jewish history, while it has had a lot of difficult, negative uncertainty and destruction, has always taken an attitude of ulai, maybe there is hope. In the biblical language, we have different ways of saying hope, which are still in modern Hebrew language, and all of them have in common the idea of hoping and simultaneously of waiting. Here I've pictured a pregnant woman. In English, we say someone is expecting, meaning they're about to have a baby. Sometimes when we're waiting for a long time, it's hard to keep hope alive. But when you're pregnant, the longer you wait, with each passing day, the more certain you are of a good outcome, the more excited you become. And that is the kind of hope of expectation that the Bible talks about. A willingness to wait. Kavel Adonai means both wait for God and hope for God, but also to expect the best. And if something hasn't happened, you don't say no, you say not yet. This enables us to have more of a commitment to keep going with our agency. Human beings naturally have a negativity bias, meaning that it's a lot easier for us to notice what's wrong than what's right. And there are good evolutionary reasons for this. You can miss one good strawberry, but if you miss one saber-toothed tiger, you're really in trouble. So we pay attention to what's wrong, what's missing. And in the words of Rick Hansen, negativity is like Velcro for the mind, and positivity is like Teflon. It just flows right off us. But there is a positivity bias in Jewish philosophy and in Jewish text. The wolf will lie down with the lamb. Peace will come, justice and freedom will prevail. Love is stronger than death. And all of that positivity bias gives us trust in the future. And in turn, resilience to bounce back from difficult times and to hold on to the maybe. Ulai yesh tikva. Now, the very first positive psychologist who was a hope scientist was Rick Snyder, and he talked about lending and borrowing hope from one another. So you can invite someone in, Rick Snyder says, in real life, a person or a group of people you know, to offer you advice or supply you with resources that you may be missing. But we have a long tradition in Judaism of inviting guests, not just for Hachnasa Orchim, real live people who come into our homes, but for Ushpizin, inviting ancestral guests at the time of Sukkot to be with us. And Sukkot is, of course, a time of celebration, but it's also a time of vulnerability when things are uncertain. We sit in huts. We admit that we're subject to the elements and the weather over which we have no agency or control. And we invite in our ancestral guests to help us with our celebration and our vulnerability. So I want to invite everyone now to type in the chat, whom could you invite in for practical help and spiritual support for your hopes and goals and dreams? And it might be someone from the past or someone from today, even a fictional figure. It could be someone we all know or your grandmother whom we've never met. There are hope heroes all around here on the screen. I pictured a few famous ones: the Dalai Lama, Mother Teresa, Vladimir Zelensky, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. But you don't have to be famous to lend someone else hope. Just think about who has inspired you with their hope or what acts of goodness have given you hope. I hear Maoz named as a hope: Abraham Joshua Heschel, Martin Luther King, my mother, my grandfather. Shari Mendez from Jerusalem is introducing herself, talking about grandparents, teachers, ministers. Oh, isn't that kind? Somebody mentioned me, Yochanan ben Zakkai. He was a great exemplar of hope, and we are hopeful when we celebrate him. Fellow human beings believing in humanity. My wife, Rebbitzin Hart. Well, thank you for that, Rabbi Hart. My inner child. So many different sources and heroes for hope. Now, having shared some of that, consider, is there one small thing you could emulate from the person that you named either in the chat or just to yourself, whoever came up in your mind, who is a role model of hope for you? What could you do to emulate them? Something that I'm thinking of right at this moment just occurs to me. My dad was a very hopeful person, and he always used to say goodbye to people, not by saying goodbye or shalom or lihitraot, but he would say, enjoy life. And that left people with a sense of hope. Maybe there's a way I could work that into my repertoire of when I say goodbye, or maybe you would choose to. Think about even a small thing that you could do that your hope hero did that could stoke some hope. And also consider that this is a person from whom you can borrow hope if and when you need to. I'm going to list two final hope heroes on the screen. We're about to talk to them in just a moment. I want to do one last exercise before we meet and talk with these great contemporary hope heroes. It begins with a quote from the Tanakh that is often mistranslated. This is from Isaiah, of course. Youths may faint and tire. Young men will surely stumble. V'kovei Adonai, but those who hope in or wait on Adonai will renew strength. Often the translation is they will renew their strength. But it's they will renew strength. And the Hebrew word is yachalifu. They will exchange strength. How will you renew your strength? Sometime by borrowing it from somebody else. Exchanging. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not tire. They will walk and not faint. So you might be soaring one day, but just barely not fainting the next. And when you're not fainting, you can exchange and borrow and do the relay race. Relay hope and hand off hope and be handed hope from someone else. When you see the Olympics this summer and they do a relay race, think of them as handing hope from one person to the next. The word in sign language for hope is also an exchange, where from my mind to your mind, we exchange hope, and also, of course, from heart to heart. So here's the exercise. I'm going to ask you to think of somebody who could use some hope right now. And I wrote just some very generic possibilities of what you might say. Feel free to copy and paste what's in the chat and to make it your own, or just do it on your own. You might decide right now to text someone in real time when we get started. Or you might decide to just write in your calendar for a time when you will reach out to that person and have a conversation. But it doesn't take much to give people a message of hope. So here are two possibilities on the screen, and I'm also going to do it in Hebrew so those who are tuning in from Israel can do this. And I'm going to give us just under a minute, but I'll read out loud so that you can hear what the message is. Number one, in English, I'm attending an online course called Real Hope. and it sparked me to think about you. I just want you to know that even with all the challenges you and the world are facing now, I have so much hope for you. I see a good future for you because I know that you will use your talents and agency to make things better. I care about you, and I'm your ally in envisioning and working for good days ahead. And then the second I'll read in Hebrew. Here I did it nekeva lizachar, but of course make it your own. Ani yodat she'ata over tkufa shel koshi, shinui, tragediot, da'agot, evel, avtala, bedidut, machala וכולי. לפעמים קשה לשמור על תקווה ואנרגיה כדי לממש את המטרות שלנו. אני רק רוצה שתדע שאני כאן בשבילך ואני מצליחה לראות עבורך אחרית ותקווה. פה אני מצטטת ירמיהו, אחרית ותקווה. Let's just take about 45 seconds to make a note on a text to someone or note to yourself of how you're going to offer hope to someone else. Well, I hope that gave you a good start in being someone else's hope hero. I wanted now to turn things over to Naomi, who's going to talk a little bit about Yael's work and her collaboration with Yael.
First of all, I want to thank you, Rabbi Debra, for making this series possible. I am Naomi Eisenberger. I am the founder and the executive director of the Good People Fund. And it was a chance conversation with Rabbi Debra that brought us to this series. I've learned that lots of chance things happen and bring lots of good things with them. The Good People Fund finds and funds and mentors small grassroots programs in Israel and the US. And it was in 2019, which seems like another era totally when it comes to Israel. It was in 2019 that I was introduced to the work of Road to Recovery. And as is my tradition, once a year, I go to Israel, spend several weeks meeting with our grantees and prospective grantees. And on that trip in 2019, I had a meeting with Yuval Roth, who is the founder of Road to Recovery. And it was Yuval's story that caught my attention. And I said, I have to meet him because Road to Recovery, even in 2019, was about the best right story to come out of Israel. Yuval is still part of Road to Recovery. He started it after his brother was murdered in a terrorist attack in the 1990s. Just as Maoz, rather than go down a very dark road from that horrible loss, due to other circumstances, Road to Recovery became his response to that tragedy. And I knew right then and there, having met him, that we needed to be part of that work and we needed to help him. And that's what we have done since 2019. Obviously, October 7th changed everything. And Yael, who I met last year, Yael and I spent a lot of time talking. And I kept saying to her, Yael, if Road to Recovery cannot survive this, then there's no hope for any of us. So that brings us to where we are today. I am delighted to introduce you to Yael, who I know and have certainly spent a lot of time with, and Maoz, who I have met through his TED Talk and heard his story. Together, they represent what each and every one of us has to hold on to today. When Rabbi Debra said, asked you to put in the chat room, what gives you hope? And I will tell you, for me, it's the 70 grantees that we support, several of whom are actually on this webinar this morning, because they represent the best that's out there and they give us hope that this can be a better world.
Thank you for that. I'm going to begin, Yael, to follow up on what Naomi said. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to be active in Road to Recovery, and what you do day to day for those who aren't familiar with the organization?
Thank you very much for calling me here. I was born in a small kibbutz right near the Gaza Strip, and a religion kibbutz. I was raised in the Tzionut Datit. I think since 2016, I'm volunteering the Road to Recovery. I once just saw a small article in the TV, and then I call them and I start driving Palestinians from in the south of Israel. And since then, this is what I do. And I find it called me, this thing called me. And since then, I'm there.
So I just want to clarify for those who may not know that driving them specifically to medical appointments.
We can do it. They can't.
Yeah.
We take them from the Israeli side of the checkpoint to the hospital in Israel. A short brief, the Road to Recovery, what we're doing is taking sick Palestinians that can't get their treatment in the Palestinians authorities. We take them to the hospitals in Israel for a treatment. So we take them in the morning to the hospital, and when they finish, we take them back.
Maoz, would you tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from in Israel, and how you came to your activism?
Yeah. So I was born 15 kilometers, maybe less from Yael, in another small kibbutz in the Negev, closer to Gaza border, even than the kibbutz Yael was born. And my both grandparents were Zionist pioneers, establishing those kibbutzim. My father was a farmer and an agronomist consultant, my mom an artist. And in the last 20 years, I've been involved in initiating around 20 different initiatives, most of them to create a shared society and a better understanding between Jews and Arabs within Israel. Most of the initiatives were in the arena or area of tourism. Tourism is a tool to create a bridge and knowing the other side, creating friendship and much better understanding. For the last 19 years, I've been active in many areas, mostly Jewish Arabs.
I know that both of you lost people on October 7th. I know it's difficult. Can you speak to what happened to your parents and how you have so quickly, and to many people looking from the outside, miraculously, admirably come to a place of insisting on hope?
My parents were among the first victims of the Hamas attack on October the 7th. I lost many of my childhood friends, their parents, their children. Many were kidnapped to Gaza. 20 of my parents' neighbors, including many of my childhood friends, were murdered. So it was like the end of the world. I was broken to pieces. I was drowning in an ocean of sorrow and pain. The second day of the Shiva, my young brother asked us, the 5 siblings, if we can send a universal message from our own personal tragedy. And this message should be, we are not seeking or calling for revenge. This was the message. And that same old night, I had a dream. And in my dream, we were all crying. The entire humanity was crying. And as we were crying, I could see the tears going down on our face to our bodies. And then I look on our bodies and they were wounded from the war. It was horrible thing. It was just everything was blood and broken and cut into pieces. And then our tears washed our bodies in my dream. And my entire body was also in pain. And I could see the tears healing our bodies, washing them and curing us. And it was like in a animation movie. It was amazing to see how how the tears cured us. And then our tears went down to the ground. It was the first time in my dream that I looked in the ground and it was soaked with blood. I looked down and everything was red. And our tears, after healing our bodies, and we kept crying and crying and crying. And then our tears reached the ground and washed the blood and pure the land. And then the land was shining and brilliant and beautiful. and I could see on this beautiful land, I could see the path to peace. I woke up, it was 2 nights after October 7th, I woke up and I've decided this is the path I'm going to walk. The path of reconciliation, the path of peace, and only if I will walk this path, I will be able to heal myself, to make myself whole again, and take all the pieces and make them into one body and one soul. And since then, I've been walking on this path. And many others like Yael that are walking it for many years, family circles and Combated for Peace, and so many other women wage peace and women of the sun, so many are making hope and walking the path to peace for so long, and many are joining now. It's a growing movement. It's a growing coalition. It's a growing exodus. And while walking this path, I was listening to Hamze Awad, a Palestinian peace activist, on the CNN. He was interviewed with my brother. The host asked him, Hamze, where do you find hope? Where do you find hope? And he answered, I don't find it. I create it. Hope is an action. And that changed my life.
Thank you so much, Maoz. Just so beautiful. Let's talk about that. And then I want to turn to Yael too to hear about her experiences. But let's talk specifically about how do you create hope? Because I know you have and you do, but how do you see hope and how do you create hope when you're broken in pieces, when there's also that difficult, tragic reality?
And I get those who taught me how to create hope and those who prepared me for October the 7th. And I was prepared. I was prepared by my parents. My father and my mother prepared me to know what to do, what to say just after they were killed. They prepared me. And it's very easy to create hope. It's very easy. You are creating hope by envision, first like love, like Hamza said, you create hope with others. Like love, you must create it with others. So we must create hope together. You cannot do it by yourself. We create hope together, and together we envision a better future. We dream of this better future, and we act in order to make this vision into a reality. And while we are doing those actions, we must convince ourselves and all the others that our actions are effective and making an impact. Because if they are making an impact and effective, it means that we are going to meet this future. This future will be a reality. This future is just around the corner. And this is why I love Yael. I love Yael as a person. And I love Yael because Yael is creating hope. She's creating hope between Palestinians and Israelis that in other circumstances will never meet.
Let me ask Yael, you set it up beautifully, Maoz. Two things. One, if you care to speak about some of the people you lost and how you found hope after October 7th, and then specifically where you're seeing that effectiveness that Maoz is talking about, where you can see a little bit of hope, traction, proof of concept that you know you're making a difference.
So at the 7th of October, my parents were there, but they survived. But in my kibbutz, there was a big murder of 23 workers, not from Israel, Nepalis and Thais that were murdered in my kibbutz, and a lot of the members were wounded, and a lot of our volunteers were wounded, and some of them were murdered at the day. And we have 2 volunteers that are still kidnapped and now in Gaza. So I think till now I didn't cry enough, like Maoz said, and I didn't have the time to understand what happened, because at the 8th of October morning, I knew that we must continue, and we get into the cars and we keep on taking Palestinians, one in the Sunday morning after the 7th of October. It was not time to stop. And I think that time, even 5 times a day, I said, we cannot do it anymore. And My partner said to me, Yael, it's not time to stop, please. Now you cannot think, just do it. And that's what we did. On Monday morning, I talk with all the coordinators, all the staff, and I tell them, please, everyone tell me where you are, how do you feel, what you need now. And I have two coordinators that their sons were there in the army, was fighting, and it was really hard time. But I think the hope was just to keep on going and not to stop. Until now, I feel it because it's, for me, not all the time. I'm very optimistic like Maoz. Maoz is like a marathonist, you know, he's a long runner, but I'm step to step. I wake up in the morning and I see what can I do good today, but very, very in small steps. So today I knew I need to be in Jerusalem. So on the way, I took one patient with his escort to Ramallah and one patient with his escort to Bethlehem. And on the way, I put them down. And, you know, every day I must do something good to feel good. And I know Israelis and Palestinians are not meeting at all now. And we're doing dozens of meetings every day in the car. You know, this lady that I took her with her small kid that finished the treatment in Rambam in Haifa. And she came to my car and just smiled for her because I don't speak very good Arab. But we were together like 1.5 hours now in the car. And we just talk really little. And when she go down, I just hug her. And I know something good will be now from this little step that I did in the way to meet you.
Thank you for that. So, Yael, I appreciate being real and being honest about, you know, not every day it feels
sometimes
hopeful.
I really want to stay in bed, you know, because it's not easy, but
what gets you out of bed on those days? Because everybody's hope flags. Even maybe not Maoz. I don't know. We'll have to ask them. But almost everybody else's hope flag. I didn't start teaching a course on hope because I was 100% hopeful all the time. It's like somebody who teaches how to organize. You know, you started off as a mess. You learned how to be organized. So I think everybody has their moments of despair. That's why hope is a universal emotion. My question to you is, what works for you? What do you find, or who are your hope heroes? How do you pull yourself out of bed on those days? Or maybe you give yourself a day once in a while to just feel what you feel and stay in bed.
I didn't give me a day yet because I need to take care of everything. And it's a lot of, you know, it's a big mess to take care of everything. I think people gives me hope, good people, the volunteers give me hope. You know, nothing would happen without our lovely and beautiful volunteer that would get into the cars and doing it even now. Coordinators in our coordinator setup that work so hard and to make it happen. So I think, and also the patient that we met all the time, and when they go down from the car and say thank you, and you know, I don't feel that we're saving lives because we're not doctors, but we give them the chance to get to the hospital and to save their children's lives. This is what gives me hope.
Thank you. And Maoz, what for you? That vision is going to sustain you, I think, for many years. It will even sustain other people who didn't have that vision. Do you have a way in particular that you call on your parents' memory or legacy, or do you have things or people you rely on?
I will share two stories from my childhood, and not one from my childhood and one from my adult life, for my parents. My father was a farmer. It's very difficult to be a farmer in the Negev, in the Israeli desert. 1 year there is a drought, and then floods, and then insects. Some seasons you have all three at the same time. And I remember like it was yesterday, after a devastating day in the fields. My father is doing dinner, is telling us how bad and what catastrophe happened today. But the same is not finishing the sentence. He's saying, next year I'm going to sow wheat again. Because next year is going to be a better year. I'm going to get the best seeds. I'm going to fertile the land. I will do everything by the book, and I will let nature do its part. And I've been going through a spiritual transformation in the last 8 months. And during this transformation, I was able to look into the operation system of my body. And the operation system in my body, my cells know that the future is going to be better. And my cells also know that they need to make the future better. No one else will do it. And my mom, she was a very, very talented mandala painter, painting thousands of mandala. And I received only one. And on the mandala she gave me, she wrote, sorry for we don't have the right lighting here, so I'm not sure if you'll be able to see it. But on the beautiful mandala my mom gave me, she wrote, we can achieve all our dreams if we'll have the courage to chase them. My mom gave me the know-how of dreaming, and the courage to chase my dream. And I've been fulfilling many dreams in the last 19 years. And I was always following 5 steps. If we have time, I will share it with this beautiful audience. First is to dream. We must dream. Then we must reach a shared values. What are the values of the dream? And now I'm sitting with many, many Palestinians, many, many Israelis from Gaza, from the West Bank, from the diaspora, and we reached a common ground, a shared principles of shared recognition and acknowledgement, equality and dignity, reconciliation, security and safety. So we know the values of the dream of peace. Now we need to build coalition. This is the third step, building a partnership and coalition. So we are building a coalition of organization, Palestinian, Israeli, Jews and Arabs, international community, and I would like to invite you, each one of you, and your communities and your organization to join our community. Join our camp, our coalition, the Coalition for Peace. So we have a coalition now, a growing coalition, and we wrote a roadmap, how to make it. We wrote a roadmap and now we are executing. The first two, the roadmap is the 4th step and executing is the 5th. And we are now executing. The first 2 chapters in our roadmap is to amplify our voices, which is exactly what we are doing now. And the second chapter is to build our legitimacy as the leaders of the future. This is why it was so important for Aziz Abusara and myself to open the TED convention in Vancouver 3 weeks ago. This is why Aziz and I are going to meet the Holiness Pope Francis next Saturday in Verona, Italy. It's going to be a public meeting. We're going to address the Pope with a message of peace and reconciliation, and we'll ask for his endorsement and support in our efforts. So we are already the leaders of the future. And the future is very near. It's very, very near.
Well, Yeshar Kochacha, I'm so happy to hear all of this. I want to make one observation about your dad that connects to what I started to say about the essence of hope. And I think, the universal that is implanted within us came out in what he said, that on the one hand, he had to sow and fertilize and work, that's agency. But he also said, L'shana ba'ah, I'm leaving it to nature. There are things I don't control. But he put his faith in it, that ultimately this year was bad, next year may be bad, different problem, flood, lack of water, all the different problems. But I see a vision that there's a benign universe. There's nature that's not against me, it's for me. I'm going to work with it. I'm going to keep exercising my agency and I'll get there. And I hear you. You are really his son.
I tried. I always tried.
and your mom's son. To teach our children to dream and to be brave enough to follow their dreams. What more would a parent want to do?
Exactly. Yeah.
Question that comes up here is, how do we build trust And related to that, is it hard to find people with truly shared values? How do we develop sincere trust when there have been so many breaches of trust?
I think you are born with trust. I never lose it, you know. I was born to trust the word, and I know the word is good. It's supposed to be good even now. And I remember in the beginning of the war, I said, I'm fighting to be good. I'm fighting to stay good. I don't want the horrible thing that we met change me. So trust is something you have. So
No.
I think so.
I believe trust is something we can build. We can build trust, like we can build resilience, like we can build hope and forgiveness and reconciliation. The only thing that we cannot build, and I believe that should be left only to the hand of God, is revenge. All the other we can build. And you build trust first by trusting yourself and trusting the other. And then it will be answered, maybe not in the first time or the second time, but the third time, it will be answered with trust. And this is what I'm practicing. Again, Yael and I were lucky to be born with trust. But even those who weren't, we can teach them and we can show them through leadership and through being a role models of trust. I think trust is something that can be amplified and strengthened.
How have you found your partners, people with shared values? I know in some cases they come to you, reached out to you after your parents were killed, but what has been your process, or where do you go now to try to increase your connections and your set of stakeholders?
Again, then you say the opposite. I think the people find us. I don't look for them, you know. I know when you need something, he will come. It's again the trust that I have. I know I will find them. Like I will volunteer. Most of them come to us. We don't look for them. They heard something that if they hear about us, something call them and they come. Also, our founders all over the world, people that hear about us and want to join us, and they come to us. We're not seeking for them.
I totally agree. It's the same with me. But when someone approached me, I start building a relationship. I ask him if I can add him to my private and a quiet WhatsApp list. If he can follow and I can follow him on social media. If I can ask for his help and support. And then many people tell me, yes, of course. So then I ask them, okay, if I was doing a webinar with a Japanese reporter today that is based in Israel, but there were 100 Japanese in this webinar. And I asked them to amplify your voices within the people of Japan. And only last month, I asked for an Italian reporter to meet the Pope. And I'm asking you, help me arrange a meeting with the Emperor of Japan. And I believe that by the end of the year 2024, there is a very good chance that it will happen. So to motivate them, to motivate our partner and not afraid to ask for their support and advice and guidance.
We have a question from Naomi who says, as the war goes on, seemingly endlessly, do you think that the Israeli population will be more or less willing to follow your vision? Is it possible in Israel today, with the very real political divisions that exist? And certainly I think we all know people who felt so betrayed, so angry, so upset after October 7th that they, at least temporarily, maybe permanently, said, I don't believe in dialogue anymore. I don't think it can work. So how do you address that?
Okay, if I'm taking,
Yeah.
I don't care about public opinion. I'm not acting to receive the public support. I need only the support of my heart and of my parents. And my parents supporting me. And public opinion is very, very flexible. And it's very easy to change public opinion. And till Anwar Sadat visit to Jerusalem in 1977, only 4 years after the most devastating war Israel ever had, only 4 years after, and before Sadat is visiting, the public opinion are against negotiation, not against returning the Sinai Peninsula, not against the bringing back, demolish all the Israeli communities in the Sinai Peninsula, against negotiation, against talking.
Yeah.
They lost faith in talking. By night, it changed completely. By night, the polls turned over in favor of negotiation, and Menachem Begin said, in this historical visit, Menachem Begin, our former prime minister, said, we can prevent the war, but we cannot prevent peace. Peace will definitely happen. I totally agree with former prime minister, but I will only add, the question is only how many innocent lives will be lost till we reach this achievable and unavoidable future. So it's very easy, and we need, and this is why I ask you to be with us. Which historical event can we create now in order to change the public opinion? And I think between us and between the Pope and the Vatican, and I'm going to meet next week, and between the Japanese people, what kind of action we can make, historical events that will change the public opinion.
Thank you so much, Maoz. What can we who are watching by video later or live now do to help you and to help you have more hope? Personally, institutionally, for all your goals, what can we do for you?
You can talk about us, first you can talk about us, whoever heard about us now, and you can support us. If you can't come and drive, you can donate us so we can keep on doing our job, because we need to, everything in Israel is very, very expensive now, so we need help with money. And we want the world to look at us in a good eye. We need your good eye and good attention.
And I will add, amplify our voices. There are Palestinian Israelis, grassroots initiatives of individual and organization that are walking the path to peace. Amplify your voices. Tell your communities, tell your family, tell your friends that you met. We are not representing the Israeli side. We are representing humanity. We are presenting peace and reconciliation and equality. Share those messages, amplify your voices in whatever platform you have. If, again, I don't know, but if you can help us build our legitimacy as the leaders of the future, please do so. We are available. We'll come on webinars, we'll come face-to-face, we'll travel around the world to build this legitimacy.
Awesome.
Before we go, I will share my link tree with all my social media links and many of the articles and interviews, including the TED that I was doing a few weeks ago.
Thank you so much. I have just nothing but gratitude for you both. And, you have a partner in me, and please call on me anytime. I'm moved really.
Yeah, we cry. I cry a few times a day.
It's we have to,
Yes, we have to cry.
if you're not crying or laughing, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
So toda rabah to both of you.
Thank you. Here downstairs, maybe you can hear the music. We're in the EU ambassador of Palestine in Sheikh Jarrah. Yeah.
The EU ambassador to Palestine
territories here in Jerusalem, in Sheikh Jarrah, in East Jerusalem. So there's a big party here, and
they are celebrating Europe Day.
Europe
Day. So I'm sure in few years from now, we'll celebrate the Middle East Day, where all the nations and people and religion of the Middle East will celebrate our humanity, our unity, and our peace. No one could think about it in 1945. No one. But thanks to the people of America and your leadership, Europe was freed, and now we are celebrating 79 years of peace, and it will be the same in Israel and Palestine.
Inshallah.
Yeah. Thank you both so much for what you have shared with us and for giving us hope. I'm
Yes.
going to just say something for everybody here, that if you think about something you wish you had more hope for, maybe you're listening and you say to yourself, I don't share that sense of trust, I don't have that sense of hope, and you're feeling maybe more despair than when we started with. Here's what I want to suggest. Everyone can borrow hope even from themselves, because in the past, you have had hope for something that you were reaching for and scratching for and eventually achieved or was given to you as a gift. And you can always go back to those times and consider what happened there. How did you achieve your goal or desire? What did you depend on? Whom did you depend on? And maybe that will make it easier for you to find hope right now. Oibsis Geshen says Meglach is a Yiddish expression that I love. If it happened, it's possible. And it's happened many times in history, including after the Yom Kippur War with Sadat, that peace suddenly broke out. Our next steps, we are going to meet again. For all those who came specially for Yael and Maoz, you're welcome to come back next week, where we'll talk more about hope and putting together a personal plan for hope that will work for you and developing some hope habits. Each week we have a hope list. This week's hope list is a list of hope questions, hopeful questions you can ask that will move you in a good direction toward possibility and to overcoming obstacles. And you can also look at past hope lists, including hope in the written word with poetry and jokes and quotations about hope and visuals for hope and movies for hope and sounds and music for hope. Take a look at all of those. Finally, I would so appreciate your feedback. I look forward to seeing you and speaking with you more formally next time, and now informally for another 10 minutes right now for those who can stay. Shalom v'toda rabah. Shalom al Yisrael. I just want to emphasize how easy it can be to be somebody else's hope hero. I hope you felt that and saw that, and how you can draw on your own past experience to stoke hope for yourself.
I just thought it was so inspiring and hope giving with all of the protests and the hate that we see, and disturbance in faith communities, and just people not feeling safe to be who they are, to see that somebody's doing this work that they are doing, and to hear the talk about unity and forgiveness and reconciliation, right? That's the message of God. And so that was just so inspiring and so beautiful to see and to hear. And I'm really glad that I logged into it.
I'm so glad you did too, Chester, and I hope you'll join us again next week. Thank you.
It's so hard to find hope when these campus protests get escalated. You can't tune them out. And everyone is talking about it. And it's much worse than the 1968 protests, which I participated in, and before that with Vietnam, because the college students then had skin in the game, stake in the ground, because they were going to be drafted and sent to Vietnam. Here it is. The protesters don't have any stake in the ground. They're protesting something thousands of miles away. In addition to which, I have read in the New York Times and elsewhere that over 60% of the protesters are not even college students. They're paid agitators. So all that greatly disturbs me. There's so much so that it's elevated my anxiety and I have trouble just barely functioning.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Alan. Thank you for sharing, though. It is something that's on everyone's mind. I have a freshman in college now, and I have a senior in high school who's about to go off to college. So this is very personal to me. It is greatly upsetting that we can see videos of people who are just trying to walk on campus, unable to do it. name calling.
Some campuses have shut down. Some have shut down, and some had to
Right.
cancel graduation.
Cancel graduation for kids who, also missed their high school graduation due to COVID. So yes, it's very, very disturbing. And remember that hope starts usually in negativity and uncertainty. So check, Alan, you got us to the first stage. There is negativity and uncertainty. There's also opportunity there because what are our places of higher education devoted to but for learning and dialogue? And we're not seeing that the way I think is ideal. But we have the opportunity. There are people who are protesting who don't know what they're chanting, who, when inquiries come, they don't know what the river is or what the sea is that they're talking about. They don't know why or how or that Israel is an apartheid state or like the Nazis or committing genocide or fill in the blank. There's an opportunity, there's an enormous possibility of better education than what we have going on right now. And there's an enormous opportunity for deeper listening and to help people learn how to learn and learn how to listen when they are college students. That to me gives me a mission about it. I also happen to have a son who has been very active on his college campus, and I'll just say some of the things that he's been doing that I'm so proud of. He has been involved in very peaceful counter protests where he held up signs saying, "I'm for a two-state solution, let's talk." He's been involved in organizing a Muslim Jewish break the fast for the end of Ramadan and Ta'anit Esther. He's done a lot, and he's one person on one campus. And we have many, many, many students who are doing the right thing and trying to have appropriate protest and productive dialogue. So I'm still holding out hope, but I don't want to in any way deny Alan's very clear identification of a negative, uncertain circumstance.
Shakala to your strength, Shakala to your son.
Thank you.
I was very interested in his response to the question, is it hard to find people with shared values? And they responded, no, because those people find them. And I think it's an important reminder that sometimes you see a sea of hatred, and it's easy to believe that everybody is part of that sea. But that's not true. Even on the college campuses and everywhere, not everybody is part of the sea of hatred. And I think there's hope to be found in the fact that there are other voices out there. It is possible to find shared values, even when it's hard to see the people with them. It's hard to find those people.
Well, a few things I'll say. First of all, I had private conversations with Yael, and one of the things she said about her hope was she used the Hebrew phrase Iyei Tikva, islands of hope. So when you talked about a sea of maybe disruption, she looks for those islands of hope, and that's where her mind goes to. And that's where she puts her energy. And I think that's one thing. The other is that, Maoz was asking us repeatedly to amplify his voice. And I think the truth is what ends up happening by default is the most negative, the most extreme voices get amplified. That's what makes the news. So you don't hear about the 90% of the students on campus who make Jewish students feel welcome. You hear about the 10% who are guilty of harassment and anti-Semitism. Let's say I'm making up numbers, but I think I'm not far off. These are things to really consider. Naomi hinted at it in her remarks. Yael hinted at it. Maoz hinted at it. There's a way in which we have divine appointments with one another, where we meet the people we're meant to meet, and we find each other at just the right time. Naomi wrote just the perfect email about hope while I was thinking about hope. And we know each other, but we rediscovered each other for the purpose of this course. Yael was generous enough to introduce me to Maoz. There are these connections that are soul connections. And to me, it's the hope of acceptance. It's the hope that I have no control over that brings people together for the good.
Well, the one thing that I was reminded when the gentleman was talking about his involvement in the late 60s, the one thing there was teach-ins all the time. There were teach-ins that were very important because as a young person, we were trying to teach about what we thought. We were trying to express our ideas. We were trying to raise the level of knowledge about what was going on. And so for me, I realized that there's a lot more knowledge. I was shying away from some conversations because I didn't feel, I like to float 10,000 feet, and a lot of times debate takes place, on the ground. And so I needed really to work with that. And so one of the things that I've been doing, and it's been very helpful in increasing my confidence to go out and engage people who disagree with me in conversation, is to raise my own level of knowledge and make sure that I know I understand what I'm talking about. And then hopefully to encourage other people. A lot of my friends have taken interest in wanting to, do their own teachings. I'm doing my own teaching, you know what I mean? Figuring out how to raise my own level of education. Because it's easy to shy away from conversation if you don't feel, and then you just end up talking to people who agree with you. And I wanted to start talking to people who do not necessarily agree with me.
Beautiful, Patty. Thank you for sharing that and for, being a lifelong learner who always wants to know and discover more. Maybe we could do with a few more teach-ins and fewer sit-ins. You're pointing to where hope lies. Hope doesn't lie in, I want to learn more so that I can convince you to my side. Hope lies in, I want to learn more so that I can expand my consciousness, so that I can understand the other side better, so that we can understand each other, so that when I express myself, I can be heard. And then from there, we will build something together. That's a much more hopeful attitude. And it's a much more humble attitude as well. So I just want to end with something that Chester typed in, something about the hope of agency. I have found that doing what I can with what I have helps me manage the negative feelings around the negative happenings in the world. It may be prayer or a donation or volunteering. Those are 3 great places to start. I wish you all much hope, agency to act on that hope, and lots of partners and hope heroes and the great powers of acceptance that will come in and fill you with hope. Shalom, everyone. Shalom.